Hey guys, so I am here with another ARC review, and much like last week, I am really confused. I thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for giving me an advanced review copy of this to make this review. It's gonna be something, that's for sure, because I finished this book and I just went, I don't know how I feel. And I even waited a few days, because sometimes when I have a book like that, I'm like, okay, I need to wait and my thoughts will like kind of come to me and I'll have something better to say in my review. They haven't. So we're gonna talk about this book together and I'll try to explain to you why I feel this way. So the title of the book in question is Friends Don't Fall in Love by Erin Hahn. This, on none of my book tracking software, has a series tag on it, but I can tell you after reading it, it is directly related to and following the events of Erin Hahn's book Built to Last, which I technically also had gotten as an ARC last year. I just was never able to review it. So I knew about this book and I never read it, but absolutely nowhere did I realize that this book would be directly related. That may be a part of my problem with this book. I don't think it's a huge part of my problem with this book. I think it does come from the book itself, but I'm just gonna say that up front. If you have not read Built to Last, there are parts of this book that may not make as much sense, and I would love to hear a comment from someone who has read Built to Last, who also read this book, to see if your opinions are different than mine. So Friends Don't Fall in Love is the story of Lorelai, who used to be a country starlet. She was a really big deal on the country music scene. Think a little bit, you know, like early Taylor Swift kind of supernova stardom. However, then she went ahead and used her platform as she was singing in a stadium to sing a song basically advocating for stricter gun laws and protesting the Second Amendment. And in the country music scene, this made her just persona non grata. She lost her entire career and she went back to being a school teacher in the Midwest, which is her background and why she decided to do that protest in the first place. This book does include discussions of school shootings. Nothing happens on the page, but it is something that propels Lorelai personally and has caused some of the events in this book because she was basically protesting for stricter gun laws and saying this needs to stop, and she continues to talk about that event throughout the book. Lorelai was previously engaged to another up-and-coming country star. Derek dropped her like a hot potato when she went nuclear on her career, and all of these years later, she is still friends, though, with Derek's ex-best friend, just as she is Derek's ex-fiance, Craig. Craig is a backup bassist. People don't really think that, you know, he had a lot to do with Derek's rise to fame. You find out that that's not true, but they were friends before and they stay friends after, even though both of them are no longer associated with Derek. I want to tell you that the story starts with Craig and Lorelai reconnecting after years apart as Lorelai has left the music scene, but that is not technically true. This book, for me, got off on a little bit of rocky footing just from the way that the beginning is formatted. It starts off with a series of flashbacks, but the way that they are like titled in the book was really confusing to me and really threw me for a loop. Here is what I mean by this. Chapter 1, from Craig's perspective, this is a dual POV. Chapter 1 from Craig's perspective says 6 years earlier, okay? 6 years earlier, I get it. We're doing 6 years before the start of the book. And this is a scene basically after Lorelai realizes that she has been dumped by her label, by her fiance, and she's just getting drunk in a bar, essentially. And at this time, Craig goes after her. He takes care of her, they dance the night away, and then they decide to sleep together for just like one night only since Lorelai is leaving town, and they've always wondered. So in case you're wondering, this is a second chance romance, kind of. They were never together, but they were clearly pining, and they have this one night 6 years previous to the start of the main events of this. So in the middle of chapter 1, there is a break, and then it says 3 years earlier. And I immediately thought that we had gone from 6 years earlier, 3 years earlier here. I thought we were 3 years earlier than the previous 6 years, and I was really confused. And it wasn't until I got like partially into this section of chapter 1 that I realized that they meant 6 years earlier, meaning from the start of the book, not 6 years earlier to the scene we were previously reading. Do you see my confusion here? We're actually going forward in time, even though they're labeled 6 years earlier, 3 years earlier. And in this scene, you see Craig breaking up with Derek as he has come into a lot of money to start, and he uses that money to start his own production studio. So then you get a scene where it is now 2 years earlier, which means 1 year later than the scene that we were just reading. And this is Craig and Drake. I realize I have been saying Derek, it's Drake, talking about how Craig is actually responsible for writing all of Drake's songs and basically trying to get money from them, and they are having a huge like legal battle that starts here. There is then a section in chapter 1 that says 1 year earlier, and the jump here is that after Craig and Drake have it out, Lorelai and Craig reconnect after having not spoken in that, I think, 3-year gap. I'm reading this to you and I'm losing it. And now you hear 1 year later, they've been texting every day nonstop for the entire year. And at this point, Lorelai tells Craig that she wants to restart her career and she wants to move back to Nashville and to work with him at his recording studio. And then finally, chapter 2, we get present day when the story actually starts and more things have happened. So Lorelai is living in Nashville now. She rents the other half of Craig's duplex. And so at this point, they have been talking every day nonstop for at least 2 years. This is the last time you will get any hint that these two know how to communicate, let me tell you. I realize that I hardcore belabored the point of that opening, but that is all of chapter 1. It is really confusing timeline-wise. It's all from Craig's perspective, and so it gets worse when in chapter 2, Lorelai, who is at her friend's and who are getting married, and they're the couple from Built to Last, they're getting married, and she has to recap this whole situation for her friends. And so you get like a chunk of dialogue like this big where Lorelai gives you that last 6-year wrap up from her perspective, and it's just like, why did we need all of this? It is such a herky-jerky start to this novel, and I was cranky from go. I'm sorry. So anyway, here's where things stand. Craig and Lorelai very obviously still have mega hots for each other, but neither of them feels comfortable acting on it because they've never brought up that one night that they spent together. And now that Lorelai is living in the same house as Craig and he's her landlord, and she's also working with him as he produces her next album, it feels just like too much of a professional, personal relationship to cross lines in. But both of them are so horny for the other person. It is hilarious. This is a spicy book. It's a real spicy book. You find this out because while she's at the wedding, there's this whole thing, like all of their friends are shipping Lorelai and Craig, and they're like, why isn't he here with you? And she's like, I didn't invite him. And they're all like, oh. And she posts like a thirst trap, basically saying that the only thing that this night needs to be perfect is, she refers to Craig obliquely, but she means him. And then you find out that Craig has a anonymous Instagram account where he posts internet poetry, which is all basically like erotic poetry about Lorelai. And he's doing that as like a valve to deal with his horny thoughts. And you're like, okay, I don't know how y'all have lived in the same duplex for this long, because this is a pressure cooker. Things get weirder from here. What do I mean? Well, Lorelai is trying to break back into country music, but they have not forgiven her for saying not nice things about the Second Amendment. So her very sleazy agent is trying to get her to go on an apology tour while Lorelai decides like whether or not she wants to pretend to repent for what she said or to stick out on her own. Craig is having his own thing, continuing to have a fight with Drake over the songs that he wrote from him and other songs that Drake is now still releasing that he essentially stole from Craig, and Craig learning basically to stand up for himself. Also, while Drake continuously makes a play for Lorelai, and you become more confused every single time he shows up why she was ever dating him or, gosh, engaged to him in the first place, because this guy is a very one-dimensional yikes. Somewhere in the middle of this mess, despite having been friends for 6+ years, despite having a relationship where they talk all day, every day for years leading up to this, and having slept together previously, Lorelai and Craig decide that the fastest way to cut through the red tape around how much they want to sleep together but don't want to ruin their personal and professional relationship is to become friends with benefits who do not discuss this situation at all. And you're just like, what? What? I was really hopeful in the beginning because when they talked about how close they were, how much they talked, how much they really did seem to know the inside of each other's mind, except for like this one big glaring thing, right? And that kind of made a little bit of sense because both of them were kind of thinking in their own way that they either weren't good enough for the other person or weren't really what the other person wanted. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But they have this ability to communicate and they have been communicating. And then once they start sleeping together, they just stop communicating. And then they both get mad at the other person because they are sleeping together and not talking about it. And so again, the book is quite spicy in the middle because they are having lots of sexy time and not talking. And again, they live in the same duplex. Like, they cannot leave and like not run into each other. And so as this situation continues to devolve throughout the novel, I just got more and more frustrated with their frustration with each other when at any point they could have just communicated as they previously used to and have just figured this whole situation out. So obviously there are a lot of plot lines to tie up in the end, both individually focusing on their individual careers and with them having a relationship together. By the end of it though, I think I was just really so frustrated that as things started to like fall into place, as they do in a romance novel, because you know, these have happy endings and everything, you know, happens and all of the goals are met and all the dreams are achieved and everything is perfect and the bad guys get their comeuppance and whatever. That's a romance novel. I understand that. I wasn't expecting anything else, but the problem was that I was so annoyed by the end of it that I was just like, this is so unrealistic. This is just so weird. I probably shouldn't have thought that, but it was just something where I wanted this book to be so much better than it was. And I just could not understand for the life of me how this book was set up. And again, specifically bringing us to these scenes before, you know, all of this stuff happens or when they sleep together or what, like specifically showing us these different stages in their relationship and specifically telling us about their ability to communicate and how close they are, and then just having the entire middle torn up because they are sleeping together and not talking. I couldn't figure it out. It did not feel realistic in any sense of the word. And I understand this is a romance novel, realism, but it just felt wrong and it felt weird and I did not like it. Didn't like it. This is also what I mean about had I read Built to Last. I got from context clues in this book that Lorelai factored fairly heavily into the plot line of Built to Last, or at least helped like the big climax all come together. It wasn't entirely clear. But I also wondered if this book was thinking that Built to Last had done some character development for Lorelai, at least, maybe also Craig, I'm not entirely sure, that then didn't have to happen in this book. But also, if you're planning on doing that, you need to at least series tag it so that I'm aware that these two books are related. Because like I said, Goodreads didn't tell me, the book didn't tell me, Storygraph didn't tell me. Like, there were no signals anywhere that I otherwise would have gotten them to know that. And so I don't think that it's fair, if that was the case, to have this book lean on character development done in another book that I did not know was connected. I've talked for a really long time. This is longer than I normally like my reviews to be, but I just kind of wanted to explain to you how confusing I found this book, literally from the breakdown of chapter 1 all the way through. I read a different review on a site that was like, this is not the way humans would not communicate with each other, or something like that. And I really felt that throughout this book, that I don't like it when characters can't communicate as a general rule, but this just felt above and beyond anything that you would realistically expect to happen, and just kind of boggles the brain. And I think really broke into the idea of this as a second chance romance, because these two didn't seem to really be good friends, you know, once they started sleeping together. It felt really odd, it felt weird, and it just didn't give me what I wanted from this book. So again, this is an ARC review, so this book will be out soon. If you're watching this the day I posted, it's not out quite yet, but you can, of course, get the book from your local library or local bookstore to form your own opinion. Like I said, I would love for someone who read Built to Last to give me like a compare and contrast between A, those two books, and B, you know, if I missed something big with Lorelai's character by not reading that book, does this book make more sense? I'd love to know. You can leave me a comment down below, and otherwise, hopefully next time I'll be back with a better book, because between this and the book that I read last week, I'm really, really hoping to get some good content to you guys soon. So thank you so much. I'm sorry this was so long, and I'll see you next week. Bye.